the knowledge that we have, we take it for granted. We think that everyone knows what we know. But when you start putting out just a little tidbits of information that you're sharing with people, thinking like, oh, I don't know who's going to take anything away from this, right? People don't know what you know. They haven't experienced what you've experienced.
We know that we should be posting our thought leadership online. A lot of times we face imposter syndrome. Who am I to be providing advice online like this? It's hard, it's difficult, but that is why today I have Kelly Schuknecht, who is going to walk us through how to best translate our thought leadership into an online presence that attracts our ideal client. Kelly is the CEO of 2 Mile High Marketing, where she helps her clients who struggle with standing out in a crowded market and building a consistent, trusted presence with thought leadership and personal branding strategies that help them amplify their voices, grow their influence, and attract new opportunities. So Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm super excited to talk about all things personal branding. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I know we share some universe here. I think we have a lot of similar passions in terms of really understanding the value of translating your story, your experiences into content and an online presence that attracts your ideal client. So I want to get into all of that today. But first and foremost, as I mentioned, storytelling at the beginning here, very important. So let's talk about your story. Give us day one. How did we get into branding, marketing, thought leadership, et cetera?
Oh man, totally accidentally. I'll be completely honest. Had no ambitions of going in this direction, but my career path just kind of led me to this, right? So I started my career in publishing. I ran a publishing company for 10 years. And when I left that, went into I'll back up there. Part of my running that publishing company was I was very involved in the corporate marketing side of things. So when I left there, I went into a job in marketing, and I did that for 7 years. And my job primarily was, I was running the marketing department, but I was also helping the CEO establish his thought leadership platform. It was a big part of what my job included, which was, helping him write a book, helping him find speaking engagements, helping him kind of fine tune his message and get on podcasts and all of those things.
And what year was this?
So that was from 2018 until 2024.
There you go.
So
a lot of this, so you were coming in, you kind of took on this role and you had come from publishing, correct? So is that why you were kind of like, hey, this is my jam. I already understand the idea of amplifying a voice online, and that's how you were kind of just able to be thrown into that role?
Yes and no. So my publishing job, I was doing a lot of the running of the company, helping with developing the marketing department for the publishing company and helping authors learn how to promote their books. So my what I thought was my passion was helping people with book marketing. I mean, that's what I was doing, right? But I met the CEO of the company I then started working for, where he had written a book. And when we met, he said, can you help me publish this? Because I had that background. And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely, right? I was like, open to anything, like, sure. So helped him publish the book. And then it was like, well, can you do this? Can you do this? It just kind of led to now, running, basically creating a marketing department, running the marketing department. But then part of that was, establishing his thought leadership platform. I hadn't been doing that for authors other than the book marketing piece of it, but not the professional side of thought leadership. Kind of a book can be a tool in that, but it wasn't, it wasn't the whole thing. So then when I was laid off in 2024, and I had the choice at that point, find another job doing marketing or, whatever, right? Whatever, the world was open at that point, or start a company. And I decided, there's probably some other choices in there, but those were the two choices I felt like I had at the time.
Yeah. You got the entrepreneurial spirit at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I did, but at the time I thought, I kind of have, okay, I can apply for jobs or I can take my experience, which I have learned after, 20 years of my career, that my experience made me unique. And I didn't necessarily understand that until I was faced with the choice of what to do next. And at that point I said, okay, well, here's my experience, here's what I've done, here's what I'm good at, and here's what I love, right? And all of those things. What do I want to do next? And I basically packaged up what I had been doing um, as an employee and turned that into a service I can provide to multiple clients. And where that led me, I had one conversation with somebody, early on when I was trying to figure out kind of what I was doing. He was saying, well, you want to talk to a lot of people, you want to figure out what to do next. You don't really know what you want to do next. I said, no, I know exactly what I want to do. And he was like, what? And I explained that I wanted to help thought leaders establish their platform. And I explained kind of my thought process on it. And it was like, I didn't have to think that hard. Like, just like came to me like, no, this is what I want to do. And he was like, nobody's doing that. Go and do that. And so then, it led me down this path of creating my company, creating services where I can help CEOs, entrepreneurs establish their thought leadership platform, get out there in front of their target audience, and accomplish their goals. Their goals might be different, but for some it may be for they want to get out there to grow their business. For some it may be more of just establishing their platform. To have that platform. It's not always just to increase your sales or whatever. But yeah, there's kind of different reasons that people want to get into thought leadership. And yeah, so I see myself as helping support those thought leaders in accomplishing their goals and getting in front of the right people.
Love it. I think that's such a common story of someone. I mean, a lot of our audience, coaches, consultants, solopreneurs who had done the corporate life for so long, and then they reached a point where they were like, well, for a lot of us, it was not myself, but I know a lot of people for 2020, the pandemic, there was a lot of layoffs and such, where people reached that critical point, that catalyst where they said, I've just been laid off. Do I go back into corporate life, or do I take the knowledge that I've just accumulated over my career and venture out into this entrepreneurial thing I've been hearing so much about? So it's such a, jumping off the deep end, as you will,
Yep,
is a thrilling but, nerve-wracking thing, I'm sure.
absolutely.
Let's look at that time that you were building up the CEO's kind of personal brand, thought leadership. You mentioned a few different tactics that you were involved in. What were some of the strategies that you were working with him on? Her?
Him, yes. And now I
Okay.
have multiple clients similar. Yeah.
Okay. So, but in that CEO example,
Yeah.
what were some of the strategies that you were working on with him that you found to be most effective in being able to amplify his voice and attract attention?
Yeah. I think a few things that kind of helped put him on the map were the book. So that was the first thing that brought us together. Was he had already written the book, and he had taken. I think a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs, they have a message already. They're going out, maybe they're already doing speaking events, or they're talking about the same things over and over and over, and so they know that message. He had already done that work of taking that, basically the presentation he was often doing, and turning it into a book. So that book, that was 8 years ago, and to this day is used frequently in marketing, in his marketing efforts. So we were giving away copies of the book for free to potential clients. We were using that. It establishes just his expertise. It just helps in so many ways. So that was like the first piece. Then we did a lot of podcast work, and sometimes I'll have CEOs say, "Well, I did some podcasts. It didn't really lead to anything." It's not about the direct result necessarily of I went on a podcast and I got a client. Like, it's not about that. It's about taking that content and using it to, again, establish your expertise. So when I put out content showing that I, for example, I talked with Dave on this personal brand podcast, right? And then I can put that out there and people can see that like, oh, this person knows what she's talking about. So in that example of that CEO, we were doing that same thing. We were trying to find those podcasts that gave him an opportunity to talk about his journey, to talk about his expertise. We could take clips of that. We could turn, actually what I started doing at the beginning was taking every podcast episode and creating articles out of it that I could, it's his voice. He was talking, he was saying all those things, but then I could take it and turn it into a blog post that was in his voice, telling his story the way that he would tell it. So there's multiple things that we could do with those podcast episodes. And then the next thing for people who are ready is speaking events and getting out there in front of larger audiences where, again, it's establishing your expertise. It's helping you get your message out there and ultimately, hopefully also bringing in clients by doing that. But really just establishing kind of that, that platform that people are going, this person knows what they're talking about. This person, this person gets it. And I want to work with that person for whatever that service is that they're providing.
Sure. Now, we were talking about the concept of thought leadership, and you work with thought leaders and help them amplify their voice online. So let's define, because thought leadership, I know it's an industry term, and sometimes I'll get an eye roll when I say it, and sometimes people are like, okay, I know what you're talking about. So how do you define a thought leader or thought leadership?
I think we're all thought leaders. I don't know if that totally loses you, Dave, if you're like, no. But
no, I think there's a nugget in there. We just need to double down on it now.
I think we are all thought leaders in our own areas, right? So I'm a perfect example. I am the least likely person to be on this podcast talking to you or having any type of thought leadership platform. And I say that because I have always been the person behind the person. I've always worked for a CEO, helping a CEO accomplish their business goals. And in my mind, I was always their resource. They were the visionary. I was helping them accomplish their goal. And I was not, I wasn't that type of, that was always my thinking in my mind. Like, I'm not that way. I'm not that type of person. But when I started putting content out there and started just using content as my own resource for refining my message, figuring out how to, I've always played with content like since, forever, my entire career. I've always had a blog. I've always had, the social media platforms where I have played with different things and tried to figure out what resonates with people. What do people like? And, well, all of that experience has led me to now being the person to be able to teach people how to do it, right? So I never did it with the intention of becoming a thought leader in the space, but because it just was a natural thing. Like I had that natural curiosity of wanting to learn what worked and how to do things, how to attract the right audience, because of that, I've gotten to the point where I can teach other people how to do it. And that makes me a thought leader, even though that wasn't ever what I thought I was going to, the path that I was going to take in my career. But it just naturally led me to that, right? So I think that that was my journey and my experience. But I think that we all over time in our careers, we develop a skill set that is so unique to us that we do become thought leaders if we want to lean into that and to grow in that way. I would guess 80% of people don't want to, right? They want to just heads down, do what they're doing. They don't want to put themselves out there. But for those who do want to put themselves out there, I think that we all have some sort of thought leadership opportunities within us that we just need to kind of work through and figure out how to get out there.
Hey, Blueprint fam, if you're enjoying today's episode and finding my guest insights valuable, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast as we drop weekly guest interview episodes just like this one. And on that note, you obviously also see firsthand how powerful being an effective guest like the one you're watching on this episode right now, can be at attracting qualified, interested leads directly into your sales funnel. But I know what you're thinking. You want to get into guest podcasting, but starting feels confusing and overwhelming. What equipment do you need? And how do you look and sound great? And how do you turn listeners into leads? I know this because so many of my guests had these exact problems in the past. And that is why I created the Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint. It's a simple but powerful breakdown on everything you need to look, sound, and convert great as a podcast guest. Everything from how to set up your recording area to what equipment you need to look and sound great on camera, and what to say on podcasts to stand out, be memorable, and earn the audience's trust. And then that one key strategy to turn listeners into leads. I'm telling you, this isn't just another checklist. This is a step-by-step blueprint to make sure you look, sound, and present your best on podcasts so you can convert that attention into leads and ultimately new business. I honestly was thinking about selling this for like $97, but I'd rather give access to this guide to my personal brand blueprint podcast audience for free. So if you are ready to become a sought after podcast guest and use it to generate leads and build your personal brand, then grab your copy of Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint at davepoly.com/podguest blueprint. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. Again, that's davepoly.com/podguest blueprint, and start turning podcast interviews into business. Again, it's completely free for being a loyal listener, so definitely check it out. Cool? All right, let's get back to the conversation. I agree. Everyone has at least one topic, whether it's something that they pursued out of passion or pursued out of necessity. So like, maybe you're not passionate about being a custodian at, a company, but it's something that you've done for the last 20 years and you know way more about how to be a custodian than I do, right? So if there's people out there that want to get into that profession, you are a thought leader within that space. It's not something you actively pursued maybe and like went to school for and all that, but it's something, right? And everyone has that, regardless of whether you actively pursued the knowledge of it or it's just that you've gone through the hurdles and tested and learned and had to figure out things along the way just out of necessity to keep your job. You've now got the assets that you need and you can teach other people. So I think what comes along with thought leadership is the dreaded imposter syndrome, where we think, oh, thought leader, I have to lead something. I have to put myself on this pedestal of I know everything and, listen to me, yeah, yeah, yeah. And like people get concerned about trying to be a leader in their space because they've always been, as you mentioned, like they've been the background person, right? They've coming from corporate. They were the employee. They're not the CEO. I don't want the spotlight, right? But I think that's obviously a mental hurdle here. But again, that's taking a little bit of a selfish approach where it's like, well, this is about me. I wonder how people are going to, if I start talking about information and the knowledge that I have within my space, people are going to look at me a certain way. When really the whole concept we're trying to portray here is you have information that's valuable to someone else. This needs to be a selfless act, right? You are providing information for other people. And I can tell that you have some thoughts on that. So go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Yes. So I think it feels so unnatural. I would guess to most people, not everyone. Some people love to be the spotlight, right? But I'm not that person. But I don't know. I had a draw to like just start producing that content. I told you I was playing around with social media and, I started doing TikTok in 2020 and I started doing TikTok videos on book marketing because that was kind of the platform. I had people knew me in the publishing industry. I have, a lot of followers who are interested in book publishing, book writing, whatever. And so I, started doing TikTok videos talking about books. And it feels super icky at first. You're like, I'm talking to my camera and I feel weird talking to myself and I don't really know what it feels weird. But over time, I've had people just like I've had videos that I put out there where people are like, this is so great. This is so helpful. And I've learned along the way that I'm helping, even though my knowledge feels to me, we take it for granted. We take the knowledge that we have, we take it for granted. We think that everyone knows what we know. But when you start putting out just a little tidbits of information that you're sharing with people, thinking like, oh, I don't know who's going to take anything away from this, right? But people don't know what you know. They haven't experienced what you've experienced. And so I've had people that are learning from what I'm putting out there, and I'm helping them in their journey with publishing their book, marketing their book, whatever that is. And I think that we just you have to get over yourself, even though it is putting yourself out there. You feel like it's so selfish and it's so like look at me, but it's not about you. It's about the message you're sharing with them and what they're getting from it. And just from doing it myself, I learned over time that people were taking things away from that. And then when they would have a question, that would lead to something else I could create content around to help address the next question, and then the next one, and it leads to like, it really it's hard to describe that feeling, but when you're starting to create that kind of community online of people who are kind of drinking your Kool-Aid, like what you're putting out there, you start to learn like that you are valuable and that your knowledge is valuable to other people. So I don't know. I know what you're saying. Like it does feel selfish, and it just feels weird. It just does at first. And you have to push through that to get to the point where you're starting to get that positive feedback and realizing that what you're putting out there is helping people.
Right. And I think a lot of the reason is because people initially, there's a balance between empathy and really wanting to help people and needing to generate income to support your life. So when people start creating content, they feel as though it's too much on the latter of
Yeah.
what they're doing. Like, oh, I'm trying to manipulate people. I'm just trying to look like a big shot so that people want to buy my product. And the truth of the matter is you need to start with the former, the empathy, that I'm just here to help. And then the income side of thing comes in as a natural byproduct of that. So just lead with empathy. And I'm here, I'm showing up for an audience for their sake, because they are me at day one of my journey. And I'm just speaking to day one me about how to solve all the problems I knew I had to go through. And when you think about it, like, hey, just talk to yourself from day one. It's a much more relaxed, understanding, empathetic way to just communicate versus like feeling like you're trying to sell an audience with your knowledge or whatever. So, but on that point, all right, so we now know what a thought leader is, and we've kind of overcome our fear of imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. Let's start talking about, all right, we've got all this good stuff to say. Where should we start when we're day one with, okay, I want to start amplifying my voice online? Like, what's step number one that when someone comes to you, let's say, where do you usually start?
Yeah. So I think that, some people know their own message in their audience better than others. I'll say where I started, I don't know, a few years ago was I wasn't doing it for anything. Like I wasn't doing it to sell anything. I was an employee in a company. I was just putting out content to learn. But what I did was I created a list of the topics I wanted to cover. And, I mentioned doing TikTok, talking about book marketing, but I also on LinkedIn, I wasn't doing book marketing stuff on LinkedIn. In my LinkedIn community, I had my list of topics that I just was like, okay, this is my guiding list of when I sit down, what do I want to talk about? And what do I want people engaging with me about? Like, what are those topics? And so I had my specific topics, and I just forced myself. And I say forced because at first it's hard, but I made a priority of every day I'm going to sit down. I mean, you can also plan ahead, but like basically every day I'm going to post on LinkedIn. Every day I'm going to post on TikTok, whatever that platform is where you're going to reach your audience. Make that list of topics. And even if you don't know what really makes sense yet, just start with something. And I started doing that. After a few months, I had people saying to me like, oh, well, you're a thought leader in remote work when it comes to remote work. Well, did I feel like a thought leader? No, but I've worked remotely for 18 years. So I was putting out content related to remote work that felt that felt like my heart coming out. Like I was just talking about my experiences and talking about just my thoughts and opinions on remote work and how it benefits women particularly, and women can stay in their careers when they have the option to work remotely because that flexibility. Anyway, I would talk about these things and people would start associating me with those things I was talking about. So I think it's important to just start with like giving yourself some sort of structure for how often you're going to do it, what you want to talk about. Again, it doesn't have, if you don't know yet, just start with those things that are near and dear to your heart for whatever reason. Um, if you know your target audience and you know what you're selling, then obviously, create some topics around that. And then be consistent. Just start putting out that content on a regular basis. And I say content, I mean, it could be your blog post, could be TikTok videos, could be posts on, maybe your audience is on Facebook or whatever. So wherever they are, but making sure that you're putting that content in the place that makes sense for them. And you don't have to do all the things. You don't have to go to every platform. But where is it best for you to reach those people who are going to engage with you and learn from your message, and then be consistent on those particular platforms.
So well, let's ask the question. Who is like an ideal person to work with you in terms of like thought leadership? What are kind of the pillars of people who are typically primed to be a thought leader and work with you?
Yeah. Primarily business owners and CEOs who are at a point where they know. So one of the things that we do is we help those folks find speaking events and we do their LinkedIn content for them. So it's their thoughts, but we are helping them. So they're busy CEOs. They're like, I don't have time to sit down and write LinkedIn posts, right? And I'm like, okay, give me 30 minutes of your time, get all those thoughts out of your head, and then we will create that content for you. So it's those CEOs who are probably like 5 million to 20 million or could be less than 5 million in revenue, but like, they're to the point where they're like, I'm growing and I need support. I need somebody to help me get those speaking events, get my message out there. But they kind of are established enough where they kind of know who they're trying to talk to and what they're trying to sell. They already have their services lined up.
Sure. Um, let's be a fly on the wall in a sales call. When you initially talk to them in like a discovery call and you say like, hey, why do you need or want our service? Kind of like what's typically the word vomit of just like, ugh, and they just express their pains and desires.
Yeah, I think it's those things I kind of just talked about where it's like, I know I need to get out there. Like, I know I need to go and speak, but I don't have the time. I don't have people on my team who have the time to go out and research events and, find me the places to get in front of my audience. Or like, I know I need to put content out there on LinkedIn to engage with my audience, but like, I don't have time to do this, right? Like, that's basically that's where, they maybe have a team, but they're just like, my team doesn't like, they don't know how, like they don't specialize in this, and they don't have the time, right? Or they don't know how to turn my content into other pieces that can then be used on LinkedIn, right? So that's typically where, they're coming to us just going like, this is what you specialize in, and how can we like have you as like an addition to our team, basically like a extension of our team, right? So we have the team, we need kind of like this specialty added on.
Sure. What are some ways that we can translate our thought leadership, get it out of our heads, and translate that into a quality piece of content that we know our audience is going to resonate with?
Uh, so again, like I think that the podcast interviews and consistently developing content help you refine that message, right? You start to learn what people are engaging with, what's resonating with people. So the consistency of creating that content helps you refine that message. And then the engagement that you're getting also helps you understand like what people are, in getting into for whatever reason. Like, so, and I could tell you, like, what sometimes, it's hard to put out like selfies and videos, right? When you're not used to doing that. But when you do it, you see your engagement just like spike because people want to see you, even though like, it feels weird. Like they want to see you. Um, and I think telling your story, like, so the story that you feel like, who really cares, but your story's unique. So when you start telling that story, like people do engage with it and they are interested in what you have going on, right? So I think it's the creating that content consistently, and then looking at what is resonating with people. Like if you're just like sending out some sort of text paragraph every day, whatever, and nobody's engaging with it, um, it's you have to adapt that. So if, like try something different, right? Like that's not working. So like try telling a personal story. Try creating a video. Try creating like so just doing different things to see what works best, and what people are most interested in.
Sure. So early on, you have to figure out what your audience actually wants to consume from you. And that could that take the form of topic, but also maybe of content format. So maybe,
Format.
okay, I want to see more video posts from you. I think you're really engaging. You break things down really well over video. So we want to consume that stuff. Or maybe you're really, your industry is just better fitted for like an infographic or a list or whatever it is. And so put out a bunch of different content styles, see what's resonating, styles, topics, etc., and then double down
Yeah.
on what's working.
Yeah. So double down on what's working, but also variety. So, I mentioned having like that list of topics that you cover on a regular basis. And, you don't want it to be just like, okay, if AI is my topic, talk about AI every single day. No, you want to have a variety of topics, even though like maybe AI is your main thing, whatever that is. But you want to create variety in the topics you're covering and also the formats, like you said, of posts that you're creating. So, if infographics resonate with your audience, great. But if you're going to hit them up with an infographic every single day, they're going to get sick of seeing that. So you want to have a variety of, sometimes it's a video, sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's just text. Sometimes just text posts can do okay, but if you're doing text every day, that also gets boring. Like so just changing it up in a way that you're catching people's attention, and so I kind of like try to do a mix of both of those things. So the format, the topic, and then always just trying to do different things. You could do a selfie every day, and after a while, people are going to get sick of seeing your face, right? But if you're telling a story along with a selfie, or then you have a video, or you're showing something about yourself, a podcast clip, whatever, and an infographic, and whatever, but just constantly making it fresh and interesting to people. It's like any social media platform. I mean, I'm speaking specifically about LinkedIn, but any platform, like you want to create some sort of variety that people that captures people's attention.
Sure. How about on your own journey with growing your own thought leadership, growing your own personal brand? What were some of the life lessons or content lessons that you've learned along the way that you want to make sure our audience knows to avoid?
Ooh, to avoid.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, again, I just think that, well, I think tone is really important. So speaking specifically about personal brands, one of the first things that I did when I was laid off was I sent a message within an hour or two on LinkedIn because I wanted to set the tone for this is how I want this to be perceived, right? Around the same time, was noticing a lot of posts on LinkedIn of people saying, I was laid off 475 days ago and I'm still looking for a job. I'm going to lose my house. You know, people were, it was really, really noticeable to me at the time because I was going through a similar journey of like, okay, I don't know what's next. It's scary, right? But I set the tone right away for like, this is going to be amazing. Like, this sucks, and this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me, right? Like, and people noticed that. Like, people noticed my tone in what I was putting out there in that content those first few days, few weeks, whatever. Um when you're negative, when you're desperate, when you're boring, people notice that as well, right? So that would be my content tip is be aware of the tone and what you're putting out into the world because it is establishing your reputation. And you don't want the reputation of being negative, being boring, being desperate. You want people to see that. I mean, and I hope that it's also true that you're enjoying your life and that you're happy and that you're thriving, right? And even if it doesn't feel like that every minute of every day, that's what you want to put forward because that's what people are going to want to engage with. And they're going to want to be excited and cheering for you instead of like this person, like it's important the tone that you put out there and just uh how you allow people to perceive you because you are in control of how they perceive you. So,
Right.
yeah.
Control the narrative, control your online persona or your online presence. Otherwise, someone else will for you, as they say, right?
Right.
And the, I know a lot of people get weary of posting more like personal things like losses. Everyone wants to on social media just showcase the wins all the time. I be the aspirational version of everyone. But I think what you're saying is important here in terms of also documenting the losses or discussing losses that you've had in your journey because people want to relate to you and they want to see that you've been through a similar journey that they have. And I always say some of the things that sometimes you are too worried about posting online because you don't want to be looked at as someone like a failure are typically the number one things that people are going to resonate with the most. And if you can show the after picture of, yes, I went through that. Yes, I took that L, but here I am today. And this
Yeah.
is the aspirational version of me. Let's talk about the loss and what I learned from it. People go, okay, this person went through what I'm going through right now and they came out the other side, the aspirational version. I need to learn more about how this person did it. And that's where they're going to start diving into. But if it's just win, 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 what people start doing is they start making excuses as to why you won and how they can't, right? Because they'll say, oh, it's because they were born into money
Yep.
or they live in this part of the world or yada, yada, yada. So you have to go through and actually say, no, 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 I was exactly like you. I went through all the same things you're going through right now. So you have to be okay with providing that context to your story as well. So I really love that idea.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. I think, I talk about setting the tone and being positive, but it's okay to be honest and true to your, authentic. Like, this is what I'm going through. And then have that positive spin on it, right? Like, so not just, I think you're right. Like, not just showing everything's wonderful. It's awesome. My life is great. Look at me, but like it's sharing your struggles and your challenges, but then also focusing on the positive side of that. Cause I think really everyone wants to, again, like cheer you on and be happy for you. So allow that, but also I think share those struggles because you're right. I mean, people um that's what people are going to identify with and what's going to help make you human.
I mean, it's like the character in a movie, right? If everything just always went well for them, there's no drama, there's no thing that we can relate to. And it's just the whole time they just win, 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 and then credits, and you're like, that was boring, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing I'm emotionally connected to, right? Yeah. So you need the drama. You need for people to find themselves in you.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh wait, they overcame that. That's my Rocky moment. I want to overcome that. This is great. So if people are interested in connecting with you, where should they go? And if people want to learn more about your business, where should they check that out?
Yeah, that's great. So LinkedIn, I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So, and I'm sure you can put this in the show notes because, as you know, Dave, my last name is hard to spell. But yeah, my LinkedIn is my name. And then my business website is 2 Mile High Marketing. Um, Still pretty new, and we're growing that website right now. It's like a page, but it's gonna grow along with the business. So yeah, but LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. And I also have my own podcast, Beyond the Bestseller, where I feature female authors of nonfiction books. So check that out as well.
Love it. Anything you want to put a big exclamation on in terms of a point you want to make sure our audience leaves today with understanding about you and thought leadership overall?
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing actually just before we got on, I had a friend that texted me who saw something I put on Instagram who said, I I just applied for a new job and I was on the fence about taking it and I saw your post saying, uh, you know, take a chance. And that just meant the world to me, right? And I think that is my philosophy in everything is like take a chance, put yourself out there. So, and I think that says so much about personal branding that it can feel icky at first, but just take a chance on yourself, start putting content out there and just push yourself to do it because you never know. Like for me, it's led to a business down the road, right? Like you never know where that's going to lead you. So it's important to develop that personal brand, whether you have a full-time job or you are running your own business, whatever you are doing, create your personal brand with intentionality and put yourself out there.
Love it. Kelly, thank you so much for being on today's episode. If you are looking to grow your online presence, definitely check out Kelly and her 2 Mile High Marketing company. All those links will be in the show notes below. If you're looking to grow your personal brand, also make sure you follow the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast as well as Kelly's podcast as well. Thanks, and see you on the next episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. Today, we learned about my guest's origin story, unique methods, and credibility. If you want to see me break down how today's guest can use those tools within the Personal Brand Blueprint strategy to attract, convince, and convert new qualified leads so you can do the same for your business, then check out this episode here. Or if you want to continue to hear more incredible personal branding origin stories and learn more valuable personal branding skills from my awesome guests, then check out the full playlist of interviews here.